Mic check.
Click that and your mic is on. You see the lights on.
Yeah, and right here, I have no vision because I get blinded from any direction that I look.
Well, good morning. My name's Scott Howard. I'm the chair of the Riverfront Design Committee. Welcome to the December 3rd, 2020 meeting of the Riverfront Design Committee. This is our first in-person meeting since March 5th, 2020. I would like to go over the public meeting guidelines for in-person meetings during the COVID-19 pandemic. Bear with me, the list is long. Masks are required throughout City Hall and during public meetings. To enter City Hall, you have to use the south entrance. To exit City Hall, you can use the north, east, or south entrance. The west entrance is currently closed due to construction. To exit, you will need to push the green exit button. Every other pew is taped off and only 3 individuals can sit in an open pew. Seating is marked on those pews. Families will be allowed to sit together. Accommodations for overflow will be provided on the 3rd floor lobby and, if needed, the 2nd floor lobby. Wipes and sanitizers are provided on the podium and the table outside the chamber. The chamber will be cleaned and sanitized every day. The press box is limited to 7 media members. When called on, applicants and speakers will come to the front podium to speak. Only one person at a time should come to the podium. Speak into the microphone, please. If you come to the podium to speak, please keep your mask on while speaking. Capacity in the council chambers is limited to 33 people. If we reach this number, there is overflow seating in the lobby outside the chambers. If overflow seating is being utilized, we will ask the audience to wait in the lobby for their case to be heard so that applicants can come into the council chambers and leave when review of their case is complete. Failure to comply with the safety requirements may result in the person being denied entry or removed from the chamber or the building. Failure to wear a mask pursuant to the city ordinance could further result in the person receiving a municipal citation. If you parked in the Sheridan Walker parking garage north of John Rex Elementary School, staff can provide a parking validation ticket to you. The agenda and documents are located at https://okc.primegov.com/portal/meeting?compiled meeting document filed equal 7725. Has everybody got that? You would then click on an agenda item and the relevant documents will come up before or below the item. Jennifer, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee Member Howard?
Present.
Committee Member Postic?
Present.
Committee Member Dean?
Present.
Committee Member Dougherty? Committee Member Heisel?
Present.
Committee Member Joyce?
Here.
Committee Member Larson? Committee Member Templeton?
Present.
Committee Member Torres? Mr. Chair, you have quorum.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Got item 2, approval of minutes from the October 1st, 2020 meeting.
I'd like to motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, John. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I suppose we should be doing all, okay, you got it. All right, any further discussion? Let's vote. Okay, minutes have been approved. All right, moving on to item 3, cases withdrawn. There are none. Item 4, continuance request, none. Item 5, consent docket, none. Item 6, cases for individual consideration. This is case number SRCA-20-00024 at 3034 and 3040 Southwest 13th Street. Laura?
Thank you. Laura Griggs, Planning Department. Last year, most of you sitting on the horseshoe had this on your agenda when it came through for rezoning to a new spud. Prior to that, the SPUD had been approved back in 1997, which was before the Scenic River Overlay Design District was established. And so this literally became a hole in the overlay district. Your vote last year on the recommendation on the SPUD was for denial. It included a billboard, which, as you're aware, the overlay district does not support billboards. Subsequently, council approved the SPUD, and so it was approved with the billboard. So when the application came in this year for review, I, as staff, had to review it against the SPUD that was approved, which allows the billboard. So that is why it's on your agenda. Staff is recommending approval. It's made of steel, which is an approved material per your ordinance. They provided a mock-up. Sorry, I'm talking too fast and not as fast as the pictures are going. They provided a mock-up, which is on the screen now, showing the location and what it would look like. The SPUD is real specific about the size and about the operation of it, and about the brightness of it. And the attorney representing the applicant is here. And if you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to help them. Staff is recommending approval because it meets the SPUD, and then the material meets the Scenic River requirements.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Would the applicant like to speak?
Briefly, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. As staff said, it's a bit odd in that this is the second time we've been here. The first time we were here, you were here in a capacity that you're normally not here on. You were here as a reviewer making a recommendation on an ordinance rather than voting on a CA. So in that instance, you made a recommendation on the ordinance, which is the SPUD, that then went to Planning Commission, who likewise made a recommendation. Ultimately, this got to City Council, where at City Council it was approved. In the approval at City Council, what happened is the SPUD was passed by ordinance, meaning that this particular address, or these addresses, are now zoned pursuant to the ordinance, which is entitled SPUD 1137. So unlike a normal case in which you were here reviewing a CA application against the Scenic River guidelines and whatever the current zoning might be, here your job is to make a vote on a CA as it relates to the zoning for this particular piece of property, which again is the SPUD 1137, that specifically allows this billboard. So you're not taking action on whether or not a billboard is appropriate here. That has been decided by the City Council. It is. What you're taking a vote on is whether or not this particular application is in compliance with the SPUD and the guidelines as they relate to this specific address. In this case, it is clear that this CA application for the billboard is squarely in line with this SPUD and any other relevant guidelines or regulations that may exist for this site. I don't want you to take my word for it. Perhaps your counsel could also answer that question if you had that specific question. But here, I see no basis for a denial given the specificity that exists within the SPUD as it relates to this particular sign. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Laura, I do have a question for staff. And I drove the corridor, and it seems that from Airport Road to the river, there didn't appear to be any billboards in that area on either side of I-44. And I'm curious, I don't know, I think it was probably 2000, early 2000, 2005. The city had asked a consultant, Patrick Moore, to come in and do like a view corridor study throughout the whole city as far as gateways and things like that. Was there anything that ever became of that study? Was there anything that ever became of that study as to maybe why there aren't any billboards along that corridor? Would anybody know?
I'm not familiar with that study, I'm sorry.
Okay.
The only thing I'm familiar with as far as a scenic highway area is east of there, in the downtown 235, 40 area.
Okay.
Where we have the scenic highway overlay, which prohibits billboards, but it doesn't go over that far.
Right. Okay.
So I'm sorry, I don't know if that came out of what you're asking or not.
Well, I know it was a long time ago, and I just didn't remember if anything had been modified to our ordinances or guidelines for billboards, so, thank you. Are there any other questions from committee members?
I have a brief question. Laura, remind me if I'm misremembering the circumstances of the last time this came before our board, but is there any intent to put some kind of a stone monument or cladding or any type of aesthetic improvement at the base of this?
Well, as staff indicated in the staff report, the SPUD included an interesting requirement, which I'm not really sure where that came from, but it said the poles shall be covered with materials consistent with the buildings located on the subject site. And the current buildings located on the subject site, there's a couple of wooden office buildings that have been there for a while and a couple of containers, and those were all put prior to it being placed in the design district. The SPUD allows for further development of the site, and we could end up with additional buildings, but I personally felt if you put something on, I don't know, the bottom 10 foot of the pole, you're really just drawing more attention to it. And since steel is an approved material, I totally supported what they're doing, and I think having it's black or kind of dark gray color, you end up, eventually it's not necessarily in your view. You just kind of get used to it being there versus if you cover it with something, you're drawing more attention to it.
Any other questions? Chair would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I will second that.
I'm sorry, who was that motion by?
Jonathan?
Jonathan?
Heisel was the second?
Postic.
Oh, Postic, thank you.
Any further discussion? We'll move to a vote.
Okay, so I just want to clarify that motion was made by John Joyce? No.
Jonathan Heisel.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay, the motion was approved.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item 7, other business. We need to elect a chair. I have served as chair for the last 2 years, so I'm open to other possibilities, give somebody else a chance. So I'd like to accept nominations.
I'd like to put my name forward as chair.
Okay. John, that is a great idea. I'm glad you're willing to serve in that capacity. Are there any other nominations? Okay.
Second nomination.
All right. Are there any other discussion? Guess will we be voting on this like we? Okay. Very good. Okay. Congratulations, Mr. Postic. You are the new chair. Thank you for being willing to do that. Item 7B is elect a vice chair. Chair would entertain some nomination.
Oh, that was a no?
Is that it? Is that it?
Is that a decline?
Fine, okay.
I'd like to nominate Jonathan.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We'll vote. Jonathan, you are our new vice chair. Thank you for being willing to serve in that capacity. Item 8, communications.
Good morning, Lisa Chronister, Assistant Planning Director. It's been a while since I've seen most of you, so I'm glad to be here to talk about, give you an update on our code update project. And the reason I'm here today is because soon after the first of the year, we hope to be coming to you with some proposed sign code changes, and I want to make sure you're as informed as possible before then, so that we can move as quickly as we can. So I'll tell you about the whole project and why we're doing it and what it means. We'll talk about why we're looking at the sign code right now, and talk about what the new code will entail, as well as the overall schedule and next steps for the work. So the purpose of the Code Update Project is to implement recommendations from the Comprehensive Plan OKC, that was adopted in 2015. The plan recommended many things related to improving the efficiency and quality of development. So we started working on the code update in 2017, and the first order of business there was what we called the code diagnosis. And that was a consultant was hired to go through our existing development codes, mostly Chapter 59, but also subdivision regulations and sign code, to look at recommendations for updating. The code diagnosis determined there was a lot that wasn't working, specifically our use-based zoning classifications, how often PUDs and SPUDs were used to get development, that we had a lot of outdated regulations regarding parking and subdivision regulations, and that for all of the rules and complex procedures that we had, there were still times where we weren't getting the quality development that everybody wanted. So specifically, the code diagnosis recommended that we move to a highly graphic and user-friendly layout, that we look at form-based zoning for some parts of the city and updated conventional zoning for other parts of the city. For phase 2, we hired a new group of consultants to actually do the writing of the code. Now that we had the recommendations of what needed to change, how do we actually get it created? And if you were at the commissioner training in January, you heard from Mark White with White and Smith. He gave an update on our progress to that point. But we also have consultants, Kendig Keast for zoning, Vireo as public outreach, and Winter and Company as graphics. So for the phase 2 work, which is what we are in now, we had some guiding principles that the team has been following since the beginning. And that was, whatever we did, we had to touch everything we needed to touch. It had to be user-friendly. That we weren't going to move forward if we didn't have broad community support. That we needed, very clear processes, and we needed to make it easy to do good development. So earlier this year, planning staff was asked to accelerate the sign code update portion of the project. Originally, that was just going to be part of the whole update, but we were asked to pull that out and accelerate it. Why? If you were following Planning Commission and City Council, and even, you had a case on today about a billboard. There were several billboard cases that brought up the whole conversations of, well, where are billboards appropriate, where are they not, what types of size and light controls should there be. And as part of that discussion at council passed a moratorium on using PUDs and SPUDs to allow billboards. And that moratorium was recently extended to May of next year. So, at these meetings, there were the applicants, industry, also industry and council members and the public. Everybody had the same questions about where are billboards appropriate, where are they not. So related to that, Plan OKC did address several things related to signage, not just billboards, which it did, but signage, that we needed to look at the sign code, that we needed to look at reducing sign clutter, improving the way signs look, that we needed to look at how to restrict new billboards and eliminate or reduce the number of existing billboards. And we also needed to look at what we were asking for in terms of the size, height, and number of signs. So the phase one, relative to signs, recommended, again, this highly graphic and user-friendly layout. It pointed out that we needed to get to content-neutral sign standards. Right now, the sign code is organized around definitions of accessory signs and non-accessory signs. Accessory signs are signs that relate to the use or the business that are on the property. So if I have Lisa's gas station and I have a sign that says Lisa's gas station, that's an accessory sign. Non-accessory signs are typically advertising. They have messaging that's related to business that is not on the site. And those are regulated throughout the code in different ways. But there's an issue with that because you have to read the sign to know what it is saying in order to apply the code. So, and there, over the past several years, there have been several court cases related to sign messaging, which further spurred us taking action on updating the sign code. So if we're not going to regulate the code by what it said, by signs by what they say, what can we regulate them by? We can regulate them by everything else. We can still regulate what they look like, how many there are, where they are on the site, whether or not they light up, how big they are, how many they are. I mean, there's so many things we can still regulate, many of which fall square into design review. So to develop the sign code approach, staff and the consultant met with numerous focus groups. I think several people on the Horseshoe were part of those at various times. We met with industry folks, sign companies, developers, realtors, architects, planning commissioners, a lot of people. We also met with the Stakeholder Advisory Team, which is a group appointed by the mayor or invited by the mayor to serve. And you probably recognize a lot of the names on this list. They include planning commissioners, there are city council members, there's developers, realtors, architects. And we also met with the policy committee. So the policy committee are the city council and planning commission members of the Stakeholder Advisory Team. And it was important to check in with them separately at various points in the process because staff and the consultant needed a good read on just kind of politically what was possible in the update. So, what's in the new code? And I'll preface this by saying the code is still very much a work in progress, and it probably will be up until the time it is adopted. But certainly, our approach is to move. Most of the sign regulations are in building signs, site development signs, are in Chapter 3, Article 5. We're going to move all of those over to Chapter 59, which is the Planning and Zoning Code, to Article 16, which will be a new article. It's the next article that's available to use. So we're going to move them all over there. We're going to regulate them not by this definition of accessory and non-accessory, but by where they're located, the type, size, the height. Everything will be content neutral. We will use their Plan OKC street typology and their zoning to further regulate them, and I'll show you examples of that in a minute. Well, we're trying to combine everything into more graphic tables so you can go to one page and see exactly what you're allowed. If you've gotten a sign permit recently, you know, you have to flip back and forth between multiple pages. We're trying to consolidate it all into one table. So the new code will be hosted online, like MuniCode is now. You'll go to a link, view our codes, and it'll be there. So a lot of things have just been moved and reformatted. There haven't been significant changes. The new code is organized around 5 different types of signs. Like I said, we've removed the distinction between accessory and non-accessory. So for design districts, so Bricktown was the only design district that had all of their sign regulations in Chapter 3. Everybody else has them in their individual 7,200 for downtown, 1,350 or whatever it is for River. So Bricktowns were all in Chapter 3. So they will all get moved to this new Chapter 59, Article 16. Everybody else's are going to stay where they are. We will touch your section to update the reference to this Article 16, but we're not changing anything about what's in the Riverfront guidelines or regulations. How this does affect Scenic River is that, so Scenic River is an overlay. There's like base zonings and there's the overlay. So we're not changing anything about the overlay, but we are changing various provisions of the underlying zoning. Like in Scenic River, there's industrial classifications, there's residential, there's commercial, and some of those will change. We're also proposing a change to Murals. The Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs and the Arts Commission and some task forces related to their work have been recommending for quite a while that we try to simplify the murals process. And the current proposal is that if you're not in a design review district, you'll just need a sign permit. You won't need Arts Commission approval. And if you're in a design district, you'll still need a CA, but you won't, and a sign permit, but you won't need Arts Commission approval. And that is related to the content neutral aspect, because for murals, we're only going to be looking at size, location, whether or not it's painted on a surface that's already been painted or not. So very straightforward criteria for approval. And if you've paid attention to some recent mural applications, there's always debate on how much text you can have. So we've clarified that, and I think enlarged it a little bit. So specific issues that the SAT and staff concentrated on, and that we are proposing real changes, are these 5 items. And of these, I think 4 of them the RDC deals with somewhat regularly, so I want to call your attention to those. The current draft proposes to prohibit pole signs. So instead of pole signs, everybody would be required to have a monument sign, which is a lower, squattier design of a sign. unless you're on a freeway. We are changing how signs are measured and allocated. So right now, signs are, the size of sign you can have is figured on your site frontage and your setback from the street. Now it will be based on the size of your building and what kind of street you are on. So if you have a big building on a busy street, you'll be allowed more signage than a small building on a quiet street. That the street design and the signage will be relative to each other. Same for height of signs. And then we're going to specify that the measurement for signs, sign text, instead of being a simple rectangle, will be a multi-sided polygon so that it will be easier to accommodate things like curly cues and other sign graphics. And that was a specific request from many applicants that be allowed. EMD signage, we're including provisions that it be allowed for non-residential uses in residential districts like churches, schools, libraries. Right now, they're not allowed without, I think they have to get a SPUD to do it. So they would be allowed, but with operational time controls, with brightness controls, with distance controls from homes. And then for other commercial uses, we'll tighten up the size, the brightness, and distance from residential homes. PUDs and SPUDs is something that doesn't often come before the committee, but we did just see an example of that. The new code would specify that the signs within a PUD and SPUD, they can't exceed what would have ordinarily been allowed in the base zoning. And if they do, if there is a compelling reason for them to be changed, that change has to be submitted as part of a master sign plan that would look at all of the signs on the entire site so that the committee can get a good understanding of how they all work together. Billboards, we're proposing several approaches. One, it would be defined not as a non-accessory sign, but a physical thing, you know, a rectangular a metal and wood structure on a pole. It would only be allowed on freeways other than certain designated scenic corridors, of which we talked a little bit ago in the meeting about the downtown scenic highway. The spacing would be increased from 1,200 feet to 1,500 feet, and that spacing would be measured on both sides of the freeway instead of just one, and that there would be a process established that companies who want to install a new billboard, they would technically have to move another one and remove another one, so that over time, with all of these strategies, the number of billboards would go away and would be primarily centered around freeways. So we hope, found out recently, since I submitted this for your packet, we're going to be slowing down the public comment a little bit, but we do still intend to be at design review very soon after the first of the year, and then at Planning Commission and City Council in the late spring. So with all of that, are there any immediate questions or feedback to sign code?
Well, Lisa, I would like to say, well done. It's, I'd say long overdue. I mean, it's very detailed information. I think it will really help developers and maintain a level of aesthetic quality throughout our community by providing these guidelines. I think that's it's a very well put together presentation, and a lot of good input on the new ordinance.
Thank you. And over, when we do put the code out for public comment, all the design review committees will be getting that. So I would encourage you to look at it at that point so that when we come to you for recommendation, you'll already be familiar. I know it's like a ton of information, right? So I would encourage you, if you have just any time of looking at it, just think of what kind of your button is. Like Scott would probably like to look at the landscaping requirements. For example, somebody here may have had a bad experience with getting a certain type of attached sign approved. That would be a great way to proof it pretty quickly. Just look at aspects that you have dealt with, because even if it's a small comment, it really helps us make it better. Okay,
Any other questions for Lisa? Thank you.
thank you.
Moving on to item 8B. Is there any communications, or did you want to talk about any of the reports, or?
At the present time, I don't have anything for January, but I'm going to get with Katie and expect an email early next week, hopefully canceling your January meeting. We haven't had that happen that often, although we did last month. But this committee used to meet at most 3 times a year, maybe 4 times a year, and here lately, you've met at least 10 times a year. So it's slowly things are starting to pick up, which is exactly what we were wanting to have happen. So, but it is nice to have a break sometimes.
Right. Thank you, Laura.
I have a
Item-
question.
Go ahead.
Have they scheduled the design review board January meetings?
The committee commissioner training?
Yes.
My understanding is there has been some discussion of that, and I know it's going to get pushed back a little bit, but they haven't settled on a date. I think they're kind of just monitoring the situation. I think that training has been extremely beneficial, especially when we have new members who have never sat in on one of those. You get to meet a lot of people, and you get to hear a lot of information. So I will mention that to Katie, because we probably should reach out to everybody just to let them know, especially those that are used to going. And it used to be December, then it became January. So it still will happen. It's just going to be a little later. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Laura. Item 8D, comments from committee members. I personally would like to say it's good to see all your faces again in person. So, you always look better in real than on a computer screen. So,
And I'm sorry, I meant to mention, I want to thank all of you for coming out today. And it is great to see everybody and to meet people that I've only seen on a Zoom screen. So this is Gloria's first in-person meeting with this group. She came in right when we started all the Zoom meetings at the beginning of the year. So thank you so much.
welcome, Gloria. All right, item 8E, next meeting date, as Laura said, is Thursday, January 7th, 2021. And with that, we'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.